All right, guys, welcome back to the Bench Talk podcast. With me again for the second time recording this is Cache Carlson with the Varminter Magazine. Cache, I really appreciate you coming on. And lo and behold, the podcast is related to the 6mm-284, which you're sporting a great shirt for.
I'm wearing my shirt that Eric made me. So this is actually my license plate on my pickup.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's hilarious.
So, yeah.
And you said you've actually been stopped at a gas station before and someone actually recognized the license plate and asked, right?
Yeah, this guy chased me down in the grocery store, and he saw my license plate, which is 6mm-284, and he asked me, he says, is that what I think it is? And I said, well, yeah, that's what it is. And he said, well, his father-in-law shot one in the early 90s, and he hadn't thought of one in 30 years. And he said, boy, that brought up a lot of memories. And he said, so yeah, it's kind of cool to have that experience with somebody and bring back something that, an old memory of theirs. And that's really kind of what we like to do when it comes to these old Wildcats and these old cartridges is to spark that memory of people that maybe used to have them or know somebody that used to have one, or maybe that's what they shoot now. So, that's kind of the fun, nostalgic part of it.
And would you mind kind of elaborating on your upbringing that got you kind of connected into varmint hunting, starting as a kid on the, was it the Snake River in Idaho?
Yep, Snake River Canyon here in Idaho. So I grew up in the small town of Hanson, Idaho, which I think population of 440 people. We don't even have a blinking light, real small, agricultural farming community. So I grew up about a half mile from the canyon edge, which from there it's about 480 feet straight down. So it was rock chuck heaven. And so I grew up shooting rock chucks on the family farm and on the Snake River Canyon, and started off with 10/22s and then went to 22 Magnum and that kind of stuff. And then my dad, his 22 Hornet was the first centerfire cartridge I ever shot a rock chuck with, and just watching what it did to a rock chuck just sparked that love of varmint cartridges right then and there. And I was probably 10 years old, something like that, when I did that the first time, maybe 11. And so yeah, that was the beginning of it. Really was the beginning of this obsession and this addiction to varmint hunting and varmint cartridges and building rifles and doing things that a lot of people don't know exist. And it's just a passion. It really is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you giving that backstory and talking about your dad's 22 Hornet, right? We had recorded this podcast and talked about it the other day, so I don't want to leave out tidbits that I thought were super cool. That 22 Hornet of your dad's, can you kind of explain the story on how he got it?
Yeah, so it's a Savage Model 219, and for those of you that have no idea what a Savage 219 is, it's a single shot break open platform. And the 219 came with different barrels, and there's a 22 Hornet barrel, and I think a 30-06, maybe a 30-30, and like a 12 gauge. And you could get all of those barrels and put on. It was kind of the beginning, kind of your first Encore, Thompson Encore, if you will. But this rifle was probably built back in the 30s. And anyway, Dad acquired that rifle in about 1962, 63. I think Dad said he was 14, from the neighbor down the road, and he was going to Vietnam. And Dad bought that rifle for him for $15. And so, unfortunately, the neighbor did not come home from Vietnam. Like a lot of neighbors down the road, on every corner of every inch of the United States, and it was in the 60s. So anyway, then Dad bought that rifle in 1963, I think. Dad was 14. Yeah, 63. And Dad shot that for years, and all the way through college. And he had it, and we still have it. And I shot my first rock chuck with a center fire with that rifle, and it's just kind of a cool old rifle. And yeah, that was the one. It's sitting in my safe right now, and we still take it out and shoot rock chucks and ground squirrels with it a few times a year. And yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I love hearing stories about that. And I remember when we were previously talking about it, you said that was like the most valuable rifle that you guys have, and based off all the nostalgia behind it. And you know, that means a lot. And I think it's super cool. I think it's super cool the history you have with the rifle, being the first varmint you took was with that at first. Yep. Fire rifle. But you know, on the exact same token, right, I'm sure that young gentleman thought that he was going to come home and he maybe was going to buy that rifle back, and he was going to go out and do the exact same thing your father did. So it's great that you guys are carrying that on, and I'm sure a small amount of his spirit sticks with you guys. And
I would like
sure
to
he's
think
watching
so.
over.
Yeah, I would like to think so. You know, and we did talk about, you know, the value of that rifle, and monetarily, it's probably worth a couple $100, 300 tops. But I don't think you could have put a price tag on it for me to let go. It's just got way too many memories behind it. And yeah, it's just one of those, almost an heirloom rifle at this point, you know, at least for my family anyway.
And going kind of back into a segue based off that, right? That was rifle your dad used to get you into varmint hunting. And now talking about the 6.284, which is a Wildcat that I love. It was one that I had planned on doing a build for years and years and years ago, and ended up backing out because I'm indecisive. And it's cool now that, right, you built that rifle, and now it's kind of a favorite rifle for Wyatt to use, your son, to use when you guys are out varmint hunting. So it's kind of cool to hear about the 22 Hornet story, and now it's the 6mm-284 for Wyatt, and you know, along with a bunch of other cartridges you shoot.
Yeah.
So it's cool that it's coming full circle.
Yeah, you know, and this 6.284 project, in a lot of ways, is like 2 years in the making. And I've been wanting to do a 6.284 for a long time, and you know, we always had other projects happening, or life happens, and it had really been on the back of my mind for quite some time. And then it was like 2 years ago at SHOT Show, I want to say. We were sitting down, well, what are we looking at doing? What do you want to do? And I brought up 6.284 again. And it's just one of those cartridges that's cool, and I just really want to do it. And so it kind of started there. We talked about it quite a bit. And then we started getting parts and pieces, and how am I going to build it, and what is the purpose of it, and is it going to be a calling rifle? Are we going to, you know, is it something you're going to pack around? Is it going to be more of a bench rest varmint gun? Is it, you know, we tossed all these things around, and ended up getting that Warwick 715 short action. Awesome action, freaking love it. And kind of started with the action, and then we moved into a barrel, and Criterion. We got a barrel from Criterion, and I think and I could be wrong on it. It's freaking massive. I think it's a heavy varmint profile. I think at the muzzle it's like 0.98 or something like that in diameter, 26-inch tube.
It's going to be one of those heavier contours, regardless which one it is.
Yeah, it's a fence post, but it's awesome. And Criterion barrels are phenomenal. I just love it. It's a 26-inch 8 twist, sticking on that Warwick action. I did not Cerakote it. I did not do anything to the barrel. It is stainless steel as it came. I thought it looked better that way. And yeah, so going back to the short action and kind of the reasoning behind, and you and I talked about this before, and we can get more into it. I'll talk about it before I talk about the parts this time. So a lot of the time, a 284 is on a long action. Most people build them all long action so that you have more than enough mag length for seating depth, all of that. Well, I knew I wanted to shoot a 105 grade Berger. So in order to do that and not have so much bullets stuffed in the case, I needed to go with a 150 thou freebore reamer. Because I went with 150 thou freebore, that means my bullet seated longer. So in order to do that in a short action, I had to go with a notched feed ramp to get that extra length. And that's all fine and dandy. You can do all that, but now you're limited on mag length. So if you get a standard magazine at 2 point, whatever it is, 2.86 or whatever the standard length is, now you're limited there. But MDT has, and I think other companies do it too, they do their mags without the binder plate. So now you can load just a little bit longer.
2.950, 550
Yeah.
to kind of 6.
I've got my notes here because I have to have my notes. So in a lot of sense, what I did is I took that short action with the notched feed ramp, and I took the MDT mag without the binder plate, and I can load it longer than your standard short action, but it's not a long action, but it's kind of not really a medium action, but it kind of is. So that was the only way I could do that. So for example, without the binder plate, mag length is 2.962 inches. And I'm basically loading it to mag length, which gives me 11th thou jump at like barely, you're almost scraping the mag. And that was with an 105 grain Berger VLD Hunter. So I'm getting a lot further out, and which worked out really well with the 150 thou freebore, because now, and I didn't know what I was doing. This was a theory, and it was almost like, well, I'm kind of taking a gamble, and we're not sure if it's going to work until it's put together. So, and that was kind of a fun thing. It's not like I couldn't have changed something, but this was kind of putting all my eggs in one basket and hoping for the best, and it worked. Did I get lucky? Yeah. We're not going to say I was smart and knew exactly what I was doing. It was a shot in the dark, but it worked. And so, yeah, I'm loading the 105 Bergers, and that's a phenomenal bullet. Absolute screamer out of that cartridge in the 26-inch barrel. So they're coming out at 33.25. The last I chronoed them, checked them, which is kind of getting with it in a short action 6mm. And then I'm doing some load development with 80 grain Nosler ballistic tips, which I can actually load to 2.870, which again is about 20 thou off the lands. And so that really, because of the ogive of the varmint bullet versus the sleekness of it. I always get these confused as a tangent. The Berger is a tangent ogive, if I'm remembering correctly.
I don't remember which it is. I know Sierra's is much steeper, so like you would seat bullets much more normal off the length. And then it's that hybrid design. You're getting that real long ogive where you're getting the bullet out a lot further.
And that's what you really more find in your varmint bullets, like the Nosler ballistic tips, for example. That ogive sits much further out on the bullet, not more towards the center. And so with that extra free bore, I can also seat those out a bit further because my ogive is closer to the tip of the bullet rather than the center of the bullet. And I kind of had that idea as well. And they're coming out at 36 and change, and I'm not really even stepping on it because that's still flat out cruising for an 80. So to kind of get back to, we kind of got off on a tangent, but to kind of get back on the rifle build itself, So like I said, it's a Warwick 715 short action, a Criterion barrel, and then it's sitting in an MDT core stock, their new core stock, which is unbelievably awesome. I love that stock. And then I went with a Trigger Tech Diamond trigger. And that Trigger Tech's kind of hard to beat, not gonna lie. They are what everyone says they are. They're good. They're good.
They're amazing triggers.
Yeah, they're good. And I think I've got it down to about I think it's an 8-ounce pull. It's really light, but I'm a big fan of light triggers.
That's really light.
Yeah,
that's really light. All
you gotta do is think about it, and she'll fly. So, I'm just a big fan of light triggers. Always have been. I don't like this 2.5, 3 pound crap that people do. Then they wonder why they can't hit anything. Well, because you're jerking it. But that's just my opinion. Don't choke, please. Don't try to die on the podcast. That is not me.
That was hilarious. Because I'm running a 2.5 pound trigger. That's hilarious. Yeah, no, that's super funny.
Yeah. So anyway, I see people and they're like, "Oh, I'm always pulling to the left." Well, I have revolvers with lighter trigger than that thing, and I always make fun of Ruger triggers because they're horrible factory Ruger triggers. So Timney, Ruger keeps Timney in business, right?
Yeah.
Love Ruger, don't get me wrong. I've got a pile of them. I love Rugers, but man, their stock triggers are awful. And I'm kind of a trigger snob in some sense as well. Gotten that way later in life. Had the luxury of having being financially where I could be a trigger snob. But yeah, so the Trigger Tech Diamond trigger sitting in a Graybo core stock, which their chassis system on their new stocks is unbelievably awesome. And I don't know if you're familiar with the chassis or if anybody is. So what it is an aluminum billet block that is that sits inside the chassis, and that's what you actually bolt your action to, and then that block fits down into that stock, and then it bolts in. And so the beauty of that is, if I want to change stocks, I just unbolt the stock, just put a new one on, and they claim, or I'm not going to say that they claim, but POI should not change because you're not disrupting your action from the block.
So like the actual aluminum bedding block actually comes out of the stock
completely out.
Action and
yeah. And then it just
I haven't even seen that. I'll have to look
Yeah.
when we get off the podcast.
Phenomenal system. Ryan McMillan with Graybo have done an amazing job with what they do. They're innovators. They think outside the box. They just do amazing work. And I'm just happy to be involved with those guys because they're just, just let their minds run and see what pops out. And they always are doing some really neat stuff. So, but yeah, the chassis system is great. I love it. The stock itself is amazing. And the rifle itself is awesome. And then I put on top of it, we put an Arkin. It's an EP5 Gen 2 7-35 by 56. Great optic, unbelievable optic, and it's not one that's going to cost you $3,000. I think retail they're like $600-700, and it does the job. I mean, it's exposed turrets, zero stop, anything and everything you want on it. Reticles are nice. Nice solid clicks on your turrets, not spongy, not too crisp where you're you're going one too far because it's got that grip to it. And you know what I'm talking about. I don't know how to explain it, but
it's tactile.
Yeah. So they're so tight, and then when it does let go, instead of going 1, you go 3, right? they just do a really nice job of it. And the glass is good. You know, is it Swarovski? Is it Zeiss? No, it's not. But it's $600, right? You know.
Yeah, no, it's impressive. I have one on my 223 Ackley, and I bought their first generation, the 5 to 25 by 56. Shot it, didn't like it. Compared it to a Vortex. I can't remember the name of it. It's one of the base. I think it's a Viper. Okay. But it's one of the base models that's a 5 to 25 by 56. Both were kind of on that same realm of like giving you wanted more.
Yeah.
And then I picked up the 7 to 35 by 56 because everyone was claiming how much better it was. And the glass, like you said, amazing. I consistently shoot with mine on my 223 at, I don't know, on 16 to 20 power. No weird issues of getting like the aberration on the outside of the optic. Glass is clear, reticle solid. I really, really like it. So for like anyone who's looking at getting into something long range for a budget optic for $500 or $600, which it 100% bangs above that tier.
Yep.
The EP2 Gen 2 7 to 35 by 56, I have no problem recommending to people.
I'm the same way. An amazing optic, really budget friendly. You know, they're doing it. Whatever they're doing it right. And you know, they're hitting that price point where you don't have to spend an extra $1,000 on top of that. And the results are the results are there. You know, they're just really nice clear glass. Like I said, is it a Swarovski? No, it is not. I've got Swarovskis. I've got Zeiss. It is not. But those were multiples in price. You know, and I've had zero problem with it. It's just been a great optic, and I enjoy shooting it. And on that rifle, because it's already ridiculously heavy, let's put a great big optic on it, you know, and let's just have some fun with it. And so that's what we did.
What's the total weight coming in for that rifle with or without a can?
17.5 pounds is what it comes in at. And that is without a magazine, unloaded mag. The can, they were pretty light. They're only adding like 10 ounces or something, right? So call it a half a pound. And so but it all in without a mag, it's 17.5 pounds. The nice thing about it is there's virtually zero recoil. You can actually watch your impact with a high powered 6mm. It's pretty awesome. I love it. So, it's heavy, but it was built that way. It really is a bench rest varmint rifle, if you will. You know, it's designed to shoot varmints at longer distance. It's definitely not a coyote calling rifle. You'd really get tired of packing that thing around.
The rifles that I'm packing around are like 15 pounds. I mean, you can make
I used to do that. And a lot. And now I've gotten to where I'm kind of liking these nice little short, especially for calling coyotes, nice short, lighter rifles. But of course, I'm not shooting anything huge either. 224 Grendel 22 Nosler, those bolt rifles, by the way, not ARs, because I kind of love my bolt rifles. And so, I'm not packing heavy rifles anymore. I think my heaviest is a CZ 550 varmint 22-250. That is a factory rifle, and it weighs somewhere in that 15-pound range. And I pack that thing hundreds of miles on coyote stands. I'm also fatter than I used to be too, so there's that. But I've killed a lot of coyotes with that rifle, but it's heavy and it's big. But yes, it's awesome, right? But I guess I just kind of grew out of, or my tastes have changed when it came to calling coyotes. Now varmints, 17-pound rifle. Yeah, let's do that. Absolutely. We took that rifle to to Nevada, northern Nevada last fall for the Varminter magazine calf killers hunt. And that was really the first time it was ever out, because by the time I finally got it put together, I had literally 2 weeks to get some sort of a load put together that was on a brand new barrel and get it out in the field. And so literally 2 weeks of really quick, crude load development. And it was shooting ridiculously tight. And I don't know why, but it liked everything. And yeah, my furthest shot on a Badger was 772 yards. My son Wyatt, who was 13 at the time, he just turned 14, 533 on a Badger. And then he had several others in that 480, 500 range with that rifle. And yeah, he's gotten to where he really likes that rifle a lot. So yeah, he kind of stole it, but yeah, whatever. I get a load.
Now you're gonna have to build another one now.
I'm gonna have to build another one. So yeah, he's figured out how much fun that rifle is and that cartridge is, and yeah, he really enjoys it.
Yeah, so I'm super glad it's worked out, especially, selfishly me, looking at you and kind of what you guys have done, right? I want to duplicate it.
Well, because I bought your dies.
I know, that's what I was going to hit on.
Yeah, I bought your 6.284 dies that you bought, so so they're getting well used.
I know, I'm happy. The funny part, I'm probably going to go buy a new set sometime soon.
Yeah. You should. These are Redding, so you have to replace them with Redding Type S. But.
Oh, I'm 100% well. That's all I use. It's the only thing that seems to, for some reason, my Lee die does as good or like a better job is my 223 Ackley dies. I have really nice Redding Type S dies, and my my stupid Lee dies that I have do great. So that's all I use. But for the majority of it, everything's Redding besides that.
Yeah. It's funny because a buddy of mine, he just built a 223 Ackley. Oh, I guess maybe it was last summer. And he was looking for dies. He couldn't find any without actually ordering them. His barrel was here. Everything was ready. And he ended up buying Lee dies. And and they do a phenomenal job on a 223 Ackley, and he loves them. And he's like, I've been a Redding guy my whole life, and Redding was 12 weeks out or something, and he's like, I needed these in a pinch, and he said, yeah, I don't think I'm going to order the Redding dies because these are doing such a great job. So they make good dies. They make good dies. I don't usually run them, but mostly RCBS, Redding, of course, some Widdens, but mainly RCBS and Redding.
Yeah, I ran RCBS a lot, and then Redding's kind of the move now. But kind of to give some backstory and context, and I guess why I'm so interested in this cartridge. Like 8 or 9 years ago, when I started doing my first Wildcat build, I went with a 243 Ackley and a straight 284 Winchester, which I did a build off of a short action Howe 1500. And that was kind of right when I was getting into long range shooting. I filmed a video, which is on YouTube, of that rifle. Mm-hmm. I didn't completely know what I was doing, but I did a short action build off of a Howe 1500 short action, which worked, and it did well. But when that barrel got ordered, it was ordered originally from Schillen as a 6mm 284. I wanted a 243 Ackley, and I wanted a 6mm 284 to hunt with, as basically, right, it's basically the predecessor to the 6 PRC, which is currently out. Right, everyone now is trying to run the 6 PRC. Right, you're grabbing the 6.5 PRC case. Guys are necking it up to 7mm for the 7 PRCW, or they're necking it down to the 6mm PRC, the 25 PRC, all kinds of stuff in between. But prior to that, right, we had the 6mm 284. We had the 6.5 284 Norma, right, which was actually, it's technically the 284 is one of the weird parent cases where all the Wildcats are actually more popular than the actual parent case.
Yeah, that's correct.
right? The 6.5 by 284 Norma. Norma was the one who actually went out and got it SAMI-spec'd for the 6.5 variant. And then right, the other portion of it is the straight 284 case, where everyone in F class is super, super into that, or they were. Now a lot of guys are switching to the 7PRCW due to brass availability, because Lapua has not been making 284 brass. But basically, I bought these dies, got ready to do a 6mm 284. I had brass, I had everything. I ended up going, screw it, I'm going to go with a straight 284, which at the time worked amazing for me. I shot the absolute crap out of that. I grabbed all my 284 stuff, sold it off, which I now actually really wish that I would have kept all that stuff. But one of the things that you mentioned, which I did, I've actually looked at the actions now. So, and I took measurements to actually, so we could talk about it. But basically, Cache is, talking to me, and I've talked with him and Eric for years about builds where I'm getting advice from them or running things by them on what's going on. And Cache hits me up and was like, hey, I'm going to do the 6mm 284. And I was like, I've been sitting on dies for 6 years. They've just been sitting in my cabinet. And so he bought the dies for me, and over the 2-year process, I was constantly getting updates on what was going on. And in the meantime, I did a 6PRC build. So when Cache did his 6mm 284, I did a 6PRC build, hated it, took it apart, sold the barrel, turned it into a 223 Ackley, and got a new bolt. And that's what I'm sitting on with that. But hearing all the success that Cache has had has gotten me wildly interested in doing a new 284, hopefully some type of switch barrel where I can have a 6mm 284 barrel. And I'm going to try taking it the same concept, but potentially a little further. So the Warwick actions that Cache was talking about, Cache gets the action, hits me up, and is like, dude, you got to buy one of these things. So I bought 2 immediately. I bought a short action 715 action, and I bought a Magnum long action 715 action. So their original actions, that's all they had at the time, was just the 715. At least for the short action ones, I guess it would be the magazine lips, I guess, or the bottom of the receiver is opened up, and so it's a notched. Technically, it's a notched feed ramp, but it's the whole bottom of the receiver, and so technically you can fit into overall cartridge length from basically the back of the bottom of the receiver to the notch. The tip of the notch is like 3.275.
It's
I measured
small.
it this morning. It's big. So I was looking at the chassis that I have my current short action lightweight 715 action in, and I think there's a chance I might be able to widen the magazine well to take XM mags, so that I could potentially run 3.2 inch overall cartridge length. So basically a true XM action.
And see, you could go a little bit further if you really wanted to for a hunting rifle, and do a hinged floor plate with a follower and get all of that length with the correct
potentially.
follower.
Yeah. Like the wide bottom metals, but the bad part, I'm running it. I have it in a chassis system to run for NRL like hunter competitions. But funny enough, I have it set up right now as my 708, and I'm having issues with it right now, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But I had to miss a competition yesterday. I was going to go shoot my first match for the year yesterday, and not having good luck with my current little setup. So that also now is making me like, man, if I could widen that out, I could buy that 284 barrel, have it on order, and so I'm constantly just scheming. That's it.
No, it's what we do. We think and we scheme and we tinker, and that's just what we do. That's in our blood, right? Especially in the Wildcat world. And I know Wildcats now with the internet, they're becoming more and more popular and more mainstream, and more companies are kind of picking, not major manufacturers, but smaller manufacturers, and they're offering some of this really cool stuff.
Like Sherman, great example.
Sherman's great example. The 6PRC you mentioned, there's quite a few custom rifle builders that are doing 6 PRCs, and you can pick up the phone and order one. Yeah, it's gonna cost you, but custom rifles do. But you know, in years past, it was like, okay, well, I need to buy my own reamer, and I need to find a gunsmith, and I need to source all my stuff, and so a lot of the Wildcats are really kind of hitting that mainstream, and more people are talking about it. And I think a lot of people nowadays are more interested in some of these obscure Wildcats, older cartridges, because let's face it, some of the new stuff is just kind of getting boring, you know. And people want something different, you know. In a jar full of red M&Ms, you just want a green one, you know. And a lot of people they're seeing the potential of these cartridges that they've never seen before because of social media, because of the internet, and then sourcing parts is so much easier, and it's more available now. And it's like, well, you have your choice from how many action makers now? It's endless. Barrel manufacturers, there's lots of them. You know,
and there's a lot of good ones. That's like a huge benefit that's coming out.
Good ones. You know, and so and stocks. The world is your oyster. What do you want, and how do you want it to look, and how do you want it to function? Somebody makes it, and if they don't now, they're going to. And so it's, you know, there's the whole custom rifle world has just exploded. And then especially on the Wildcat side, and we're seeing people getting really excited about some of these old cartridges that we run, you know, 225 Winchester. That's been, you know, it's a cool old cartridge, and Eric started doing more stuff with it, and now people are starting talking about it more, and the 218Bs and the 22 Hornets really gotten the surges in the last 5 years.
I was literally just at the range the other day and ran into a guy who had a Martini Action original 218B that someone had reamed out to an Ackley, and he was at the range sitting next to me, and he was fireforming it, and he saw me shooting my 223 Ackley, and he was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I explained it to him, and he had said he had just brought it off Gunbroker. It was his very first Wildcat. He thought the whole Ackley thing was so cool.
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome. The guy's retired. He was like 60 years old. He had bought it to tinker around with, and that's fine. And like, I love seeing older people, right? Like old dog learn a new trick.
Yeah.
I think the cooler movement though is seeing the younger generation being like, man, like the stuff from Hornady or the stuff from whatever other manufacturers, I want to do something different.
Yeah.
And I want to get peak. I want to get peak performance out of it. I want to tinker with it like I would a Hotrod.
Yep.
I love that. It's fun, and you're seeing stuff come out of the woodworks that you never would have. Like I remember when I was first looking at like crazy 6mm Wildcats, the 6mm Mark IV was one I looked at like 10 years ago, and Packnor had a reamer for it. I was buying a barrel from Packnor, and they were like, "Hey, we could do basically a short-throated barrel for you." And I was like, "Man, I don't know where I'm going to find this reamer to finish off, you know, the barrel job." And the 6mm Mark IV was a 7 mag neck down to 6mm.
Yep.
And that was the big thing. And now 7 PRC comes out. You have the 6.7 Power Stroke. Immediately, guys went Wildcatted it. Now they're shooting, you know, 110s at 3,600 feet a second out of a 7 PRC case.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I love it. It's like one of the best times to be into shooting right now. Bad for components availability, but we're seeing high BC, high grain bullets coming out in every caliber. We're seeing people come out like Sierra, love them to death, and they're coming out with now the Varmint King line.
Yep.
So you're seeing bullet manufacturers not only favor the realm for precision rifle shooting or for competition stuff, but also putting focus on like the recreational shooting, specifically varmint related stuff and predator hunting, which is awesome.
And when it comes to the bullets itself, you're seeing, you know, higher BC varmint bullets now than you've never seen before. And I'll be the first one to say it. Yes, Sierra did it first. Sierra's the one that did it first with the 69 Blitz King. Everyone's, Hornady came out years later with a 69 V match or whatever they call it. The 62 grain V match. Well, Sierra 64 tip Game King was right there. Years prior, I've been shooting them for years.
And I know a lot of people don't like them, but the 60 grain tip Game Kings were also great. I know you guys shoot the 60s.
Yeah, they're great.
I shoot
they're
the
amazing.
60s, and the 60s are awesome.
The 60s are awesome. And like the 69 SBKs. Oh gosh, I think I'm the very first person that ever shot one in a 22 Creedmoor. And you couldn't get it as a component. And I went down and I bought their Sierra Prairie Enemy 223, I think it was, because it was offered in 223 and 224 Valkyrie. And I went and bought 223 ammo and I pulled every bullet out. And that bullet was not even in quick load. I had to build it in quick design, and then so I could actually use it. I had no BC. There was a little bit of data out there as far as ballistic coefficients and that kind of stuff, but I built it, and I shot it out of a 22 Creedmoor. I think I was the very first one to ever do that. And now everyone's talking, oh, the 69 SBK is the greatest bullet, and it is. It's the greatest bullet. I love it. And now they have the tip Game King 69 grain. And so, I built my 22 Creedmoor specifically for the 64 tip Game King.
You keep talking, Eric. I'm gonna walk off for just a second. You keep talking.
You're good. So I built my 22 Creedmoor for the 64 tip Game King. That was the bullet that I built that rifle around for multiple reasons. It was the right weight, and I felt that would complement that 8 twist and the cartridge itself quite well. And then the design of it, the tip Game King basically is just what it says is a tipped Game King, and ridiculously accurate, ridiculously explosive, especially at the velocities that I was throwing it at. And well, I have a dead 22 Creedmoor in the safe because of it. And it was the funnest 800 rounds I think I've ever shot, not gonna lie. But
what was the velocity you guys were getting the 64s at?
I was shooting them at 3,700 feet per second. And I did that because I knew my action would hold up where others would fail. I used the CZ 550 action, which is a Mauser action that was developed in the 1800s with some improvements, obviously, a controlled feed action. And I knew that action would take the abuse that a lot of these newer actions just flat wouldn't do. You'd be breaking extractors, you'd be breaking ejectors, you'd be breaking parts, you'd be locking it up. Because I was pushing it at 64, 65,000 PSI consistently. Not every once in a while. I mean, every single shot was 64 or 65,000 PSI. And you're not going to do that in some actions. You're just not. You're going to have a pile of parts with a locked up action. And I pushed it. Everyone talked about how much of a hot rod it was. So I built one. I think that was in 2019, I think, when I built mine. So I built it before most people had ever even heard of such a thing. And I had a lot of fun doing it, and I haven't fired it in 3 or 4 years now. It's just, it was a lot of fun. But Wildcats are a lot of fun. And it kind of gets to that point too, because you can really dive down the rabbit hole, and it depends on how far you want to dive. How much brass prep do you want to do? Some of these are the easy button. 22 Creedmoor, that's as easy as a 22K Hornet. It really is. You take 6 Creed brass, you throw it through your die, you neck it down, you don't trim, you camfer, you burr, it's done, right? 6.284 in a lot of sense is kind of the same way. You neck it down, you might trim depending on the brass, but not much. You camfer, you burr, load. Now you start getting into some of these other ones like 219 zipper. You start with 30-30 brass, and you have form dies, and you have to bring it down, and you have to do it in steps, and you have to do it in kneel. And, you know, so how deep down this rabbit hole do you really want to go? There's some Wildcats out there right now that are the easy buttons. So the PRC line is another easy button. There's some other ones, and these guys are talking about, oh, you need $6,000 or $8,000 worth of custom carbide dies. This is bullshit. I can call a few companies I won't name, and I can have them built right now, today, and they'll be on my doorstep in 6 weeks. So, but do I want to go down that rabbit hole? No, not really. Do I really want to spend all that time building brass for something that already exists in a commercial cartridge? No, probably not. You know, we have the 24 varmeter, which we've talked about before, which is a 6.8 SPC neck down to 6mm with a blown 30-degree shoulder. It's kind of the easy button. There is some trimming involved. That's pretty much it. Neck down, trim, load, done. Basically one step minus trimming. But you know, it's kind of, it's pretty easy to do. The Acklys are so easy to do. And you just get that extra performance out of it. And really, when it came down to the wildcatting world, it was a bunch of crazy old guys that decided they wanted to, you know, like the 6.284, for example. The 284 Winchester came out in like 1962, something like that. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry, something like that.
And so, but then all of a sudden, somebody's like, "Hey, you know, I can take that and neck it down to 6mm, and we can really have some fun." And that came out in about 1963. And then later on is where the 6.5 came in, because the 6.5mm stuff was European. It really wasn't a U.S. deal. Americans like 30 calibers. That's what they wanted. That's all they wanted. If it wasn't a 30 cal, it wasn't crap, right? And that lasted forever, you know, all the way up into probably the 70s. A great example of an amazing cartridge that was a commercial flop is the 6.284 Winchester. And why? Because it was a 6.5mm, and no one wanted that, even though it's an unbelievable performer and it's hung on and it's still got a huge following. But the 6.5mm was not popular at all. And so times have changed. Bullet technology's gotten better. We have better bullets now than we've ever had. And that brings on more innovation and more ideas of, I can take this and I can take that and I can turn it into this or turn it into that. And I have the right barrel technology. I have the right twist rate. I have the right bullet to achieve that. We have the right powders now. Unbelievable selection of powders. That
talking about all the components and stuff, Cache. What are the components that you guys are using right now for the 6.284? You guys are, what brass are you sourcing, and then what powders are you messing with?
I'm using Peterson brass. Peterson 6.5 284 brass that I neck down. Peterson is great brass. I absolutely love it. And then I'm using Rotumbo for the 105s. And then I've been playing around a little bit with RL 15.5 with the 80 grain, and that's showing really good promise. I think I could get a little bit more out of it by changing powders. So I'm really thinking about going H1000 on it just to try it out. But that class of powder is really where I need to be on that. But Peterson brass, I love Peterson brass. There are differences in it. Obviously, I've always found that Peterson had a little bit less case capacity than some of the other out there.
Yeah, like runs thicker.
Yep. And that's okay, right? You're building the same pressure with less powder, but you need to understand the difference between brass, that they're not all created equal. You could have 3 brands of brass, the exact same cartridge, and they're going to be 3 completely different water weight averages. And you need to understand that just because the book says, well, this is your max charge, and you load that in brass with slightly less case capacity, and you're wondering why you're hitting pressure, it's because your case volume's not the same, right? Reloading books doesn't tell you what brass they used. They tell you what test barrel, but they didn't say we used Norma brass in a pack Norm barrel. And so, there's a lot more to it. And then changing the volume of that parent case by going to a Wildcat, whether you're necking it down or you're bringing it up, you're changing the shoulder. Your fire form loads may not be the same as your post fire form loads, because you had to create a false shoulder, which slightly less. And so it's important to understand your brass prep and know all the components and all the volumes and every in and out of all of your brass. Brass is the most important piece of the puzzle, the way I look at it. But brass prep for me is some of the most tedious, boring work that there is. But it's very important to go through the process, understand what you're doing, measure, remeasure, and that will solve so many problems. It's just brass. And I don't enjoy brass prep. I don't. And because it's the longest process, I'd rather seek bullets. I love seeking bullets. But brass prep is probably the most important step.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And with the brass prep, that I'm kind of a brass prep focuser as well. Are you guys annealing?
Yes. Yep.
And are you doing amp, or are you doing anneal easy?
Amp. Yep. I love the amp annealer. It's actually sitting at Eric's right now. We all kind of went together on it because it was ridiculously expensive. But it's slow because it's one cartridge at a time. Mm-hmm. Now they've got some components, I think, in newer models. I forget how old ours is, but I think there's some new models that sped it up and have the case feeders or something.
The case feeder is kind of like a weird claw design. The one I have is one of the newer ones, but I mean, I can sit and just pluck cases, and I can do 100 cases pretty quick.
Yeah, it goes pretty quick. Once you get everything set right, it's breeze. But I always tell everybody with an amp, just be prepared to fry a couple pieces of brass before you get it right. But once you get it set right, it's a breeze. It really is. Great annealers. But yeah, we use an amp annealer. Some of these other ones, like the annealies, I'd love to have one, just because I think it would be so easy and not take up so much space, and they're not very expensive, right? And
I had one, but the consistency was the issue I was finding. And guys brought up great points that basically you can technically heat the exterior of the brass to 700-800 degrees, right? The point it needs to anneal, but there's no real check to make sure you're actually getting that heat all the way through the piece of brass. Yep. So like for me, I did, I don't know, a handful of firings on 243 Ackley brass, and I was using the anneal easy, and it got to a point my accuracy went like really bad. Like a gun that shoots normal 1/2-inch groups was shooting 2-inch groups in 100 yards, and I was like, ooh, like that's really odd. Nothing changed, and I did a bunch of research, and I convinced myself it was the annealing, and I went and spent $2,000, and I got an amp annealer. I grabbed that exact same batch of brass that had been, basically really shitty for accuracy. Yep. I annealed it, full length sized it, did everything, took the exact same load. It shot 1/4 inch again. Yeah. And I was just like, well, if you have a cartridge you're basically just stomping on, you need to take the brass prep extra serious. And
that's the big difference between like the amp annealer using induction versus a flame, where induction, like on the amp annealer, it is even heat all the way around it. There is not a spot that is really hotter or colder than the other. Where a flame and it rolls, you're going to get hot spots and you're going to get cold spots, and one side might, one section might be 600 degrees and the other section's at 700 degrees where it is. And then when it cools, it contracts funky, right? Because one side cools faster than the other, and there's all those, and it's metallurgy, and I'm not a metallurgist, but there's all those crazy things that can happen. And like I said, brass prep is the most important piece of the puzzle. It doesn't matter how great of bullets you have. It doesn't matter how great of primers you have. It doesn't matter how expensive of a build you have. If your brass prep sucks, the whole thing's going to suck. It's just kind of the way it is. Doesn't matter, like in football, and you're a football player, you could have the best line in the entire nation, and your quarterback just can't throw to save his ass. Congratulations on having the best line.
Yeah, you can definitely. I've had it at least, 4 or 5 different rifles that I've noticed that some issue with brass prep when I was figuring out, over the years of how I do my brass prep, my reloading, where I'd change something in brass prep and it would have a massive correlation to accuracy downrange, which is, it's odd. It's not harped on enough. It's really not.
Yeah. And I'm weird. Maybe I'm weird. When I have a new set of dies, it has its own shell holder. That's the shell holder that goes with that set of dies. I don't use another shell holder, even though it's still say an RCBS number 10 for 223 or 221 Fireball or whatever it might be. That's the only shell holder that set of brass or that set of dies uses, because the difference in your shell holder makes a difference. And if you set your dies to a specific shell holder, it needs to stay with that set of dies.
So, and that's a great point. And normally they say that you should use the shell holder from the die manufacturer. Because I had a bunch of issues where I was using RCBS dies with, and I believe it was an RCBS 243 Ackley die, if I'm remembering right. And I was using a Hornady shell holder for normal 308. And I sized some brass, and I want to say I had some case head separations, which I immediately was like, wow, that's a big issue. Yeah. And I ended up finding out that basically that shell holder that I had that was the Hornady one was like potentially, I want to say it was like 5 or 10 thousandths shorter in the rim. So basically I was able to size my case that much more. So now I just have the coax press. So coax press, it's that same threshold every time.
Yep. Yeah. But that for me, that was always important. So when I get a new set of dies, it gets its own shell holder, and that's all it will ever use. And for the life of that set of dies, which the life of dies is pretty strong. Yeah,
forever. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't really wear them out. At least I've never wore them out. I guess it would be possible, but you'd have to do a hell of a lot more than I do on a single stage press. But that's just kind of the way I've always operated when it came to that kind of stuff and brass prep. And even though, like I said, it's not exactly like my most enjoyable job, but it's the most important job. And so, and kind of reverting back to, wildcatting, because we're taking one thing and making it something else, and how far down that rabbit hole you really want to go, because the sky's the limit. It's all brass prep. It all comes down to brass prep, and it doesn't matter if you're necking something down, or you're necking something up. If you're changing a shoulder, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. You're doing that process, and it needs to be done correctly, or your results are going to show it. And but that kind of goes for any even commercial cartridges. I'm not saying that Wildcats are special, because they aren't. I think they are, but they really aren't. But brass prep for a 308 win should be the same process as a 6mm 284. Keep the consistency and do what works for you, but make it work, and take the time, spend the time, and do it correctly, and you'll see it at the range. I guarantee you'll see it at the range.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Maybe at some point, you, Eric, and I can do a podcast and talk about kind of how we go about doing the reloading stuff. I don't think we have enough time to talk about it right now. We're about at an hour. But that'd be a cool one. But I did want to take note and say I saw Eric put a post on Instagram, so it's not a secret anymore. Eric, I hope you're listening to this Wednesday morning, and just know we're both very glad that everything's going great and you're having a speedy recovery. Hopefully you guys will be out varmint hunting in October, and everything is a speedy recovery. So please, everyone, if you guys haven't already, go check out the Varminter page. And if you guys go on their page, either on Instagram or Facebook, and you guys see the post that Eric just talked about, he had a heart attack the other night and went and had open heart surgery and had a triple bypass, and he's in recovery. He's doing great. He put a real funny photo up of basically a coyote doing open heart surgery on someone that looks like him. So give him a comment, send some positive thoughts or prayers his way. And again, Eric, we're glad that you're doing okay, and I hope you enjoy the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. And Eric's been a big part of really my later in my life, my varmint hunting and varmint addiction, and getting hooked up with Eric. And we're roughly 10 years apart in age, but we kind of think the same, and we kind of have the same passions, and kind of started in kind of the same way, and fell in love with varmint hunting as youth. And it's followed me the rest of my entire life, and I met great people through the varmint world, the predator world, and it's a great community to be a part of, and a world of information and people willing to help out. And I don't know how many questions I answer constantly on instant messenger or text message, and I enjoy doing it because this is what I love to talk about. You want to talk about rifles? Hell yeah, let's talk about rifles for an hour. I can work and wait, right? And it's just one of those things when you're passionate about it and you love what you do. That's all you want to talk about. I'm sure some people are going to get tired of me talking about it.
I'm in the exact same boat. That's like, I'm sure you're the same way as me, right? We get at any family function or friend function or something, you connect with someone who's another hunter or they're just shooting, and you're just like, we're going to talk for the next hour.
Yeah, and it's just really kind of a fun thing. And, like my dad got me really started in varmint hunting when I was really young. My grandpa was in World War II and had to pack a rifle with him everywhere he went. And as soon as he got off that boat in Portland, Oregon, he never looked at another rifle and could care less if he ever saw another one. But my dad picked it up from his uncle, who was really good friends with Steve Harrett of the 30 Harrett, who was just a machinist that liked to shoot rock chucks, and decided that, hey, I can take a contender and build a barrel and do a Wildcat and have fun and shoot stuff. And so my dad really got into the varmint world because of his uncle Wayne Wyatt. Not the reason why I would name Wyatt, but there's that coincidence. And so I grew up shooting varmints and having a really good time. And one of the things we didn't talk about this one, but we will, because I think it's important, and the difference why I'm a varmint hunter and not a big game hunter.
So funny enough, I just a second ago, I was just like, damn, we didn't hit on that.
Yeah. And so we're going to hit on that real quick. And let's just be honest. I don't know how to hunt big game because I've never done it. And the reason why is growing up farming, when everybody else was going to go to deer camp or elk camp or whatever, I was sitting in a tractor digging sugar beets or potatoes or thrashing grain or beans or plowing fields, whatever. Our work didn't our work didn't stop, and harvest was the most important. You just didn't take off and go elk hunting. But in the spring and in the summer, and it was spring varmints, and I lived right on the Snake River Canyon, and I could get my water done, whatever we needed to do, and I could go shoot rock chucks, and I could go shoot ground squirrels. And in the winter, feeding cows, you know, kind of started with shooting a random coyote out of the pickup, out of the window of an old Ford pickup, to learning to call coyotes. And so my whole journey, and the reason why I'm a varmint hunter, is because of the way I was brought up and the way I was raised, and because of farming, and because that took precedence. Spring varmints and winter coyotes, that's what I did. That was my recreation. And so I don't know how to hunt big game, and I don't think I'm a lesser person because of it. I always had a freezer full of beef, pork, and lamb. Why the hell would I need an elk? You know? And so, and I don't have to eat coyotes and rock chucks and stuff. And, you know, I don't have to do that. You know, other predators and birds of prey, they need a free meal. So that, you know, it's my charity work.
No, it's good. I'm glad you touched on that, because it was funny. Cache said it the other day, and I immediately thought about it, and then thought about myself. And when I was right around 12 or 13, I went to high school at 13. Basically, that's the legal age in the state of California. You can start hunting big game is the age of 12. So I got basically 1 year of 8th grade where I was able to go big game hunting. And then I immediately went into high school football, college football career. And for like 7 years, 8 years, I really didn't big game hunt, but I crushed it with calling coyotes and going out and going predator hunting. And then in California, we have hogs. So for me, hog hunting was a huge deal. But it is not the same as like, and granted, prior to me saying this, because a good buddy of mine will probably listen to this, and he's going to say, that's bullshit. Some guys do hunt hogs the same way that people hunt, you know, elk and deer and shit in Western states. It's normally from a guiding standpoint, right? Guys set up, you know, spotting scopes, big glass. They're trying to find hogs long distance, and they're picking them up at brush canyons where basically they'll take, you know, almost beds. They cut beds into like the side of the hills and stuff. That's not the normal thing for like the average pig hunter in the Central Valley in California. Normally it's, you're either on public or private property, you're cruising around at daybreak or sunset. Hogs are moving at that time. You're shooting them out of the truck. You're hopping out, proning out, right? It's kind of a shit show. It always turns into a cowboy thing. So that, for me at a young age, that was like the adrenaline, finding guys who are running hog dogs. And I really didn't get into big game hunting until now. And then still every rifle I build, and, you know, guys that I'm focusing on talking to, right, are all wildcats that, for the most part, fall back on varmint hunting, coyote hunting, stuff like that. So when you mentioned it, I remember stopping you and being like, damn, I didn't realize how I grew up really dictated how, you know, as an adult, my hunting focus is now. So it's a cool concept, right? If you see some local guy who's into varmint hunting, pick his brain. Maybe it's a similar setup, right? Where like for you, it was a livelihood thing. For me, it was just, right, convenience of sports growing up as a kid. But super cool story regardless.
Yeah. And you know, we all have our story and how we got started, and I know good friends of mine that, I mean, they live for hunting big game, whether it be with a bow or a rifle. I mean, they live for it, and I absolutely 100% support them, and whatever they needed me to help them haul out a deer, call me, I'll be there, right? I'm not afraid of that. But you know, it's the whole differences of how I was brought up versus other people, and because my lifestyle, this is how it molded me, and our livelihood molded me to become a varmint and predator hunter, and I love it. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Awesome. Well, Cache, I really do appreciate you coming on and talking to us about the 6mm-284. Hopefully, at some point this year, we can all meet up, right, when none of us were kind of expecting that crazy news with Eric. But again, very excited to hear that you're having a great recovery, Eric. and maybe we'll make something happen later this year if you guys are going to be in southern Idaho for some reason.
I think we need a good badger hunt. I think
that'd be super fun.
I love hunting badgers. It is lots of fun. Spot and stock stuff. I love it. It's a rush. It really is a rush.
And are you guys doing the majority of that?
What's that?
I'm not sure you're going to get me to do that. I've done it before, but like you got to make sure that badger's real dead.
Okay, so I got real quick. I got to tell you the story. A few years ago, Eric and I were together, and I shot this badger like 200 yards with my 243 AR-10, and he kind of lurched, and I didn't know if I hit him very well, and then I was getting ready for a second shot, and down the hole he went. So we go out there, and we can see him kind of down there, and anyway, I reached in. I couldn't reach him. So Eric goes back to his 4Runner, grabs his shovel. We start digging around. I finally get halfway down in this freaking hole, and I get a hold of him barely, and I'm starting to pull on him, and I get a little bit more, and I start pulling on him. Well, I start feeling resistance. And I told Eric, I said, listen, I'm going to basically roll out of this freaking hole. I don't even know if I'll be able to stand up. If this son of a bitch is alive, you just shoot until it falls. Great. It was dead, but it's a little nerve wracking. Stick your hand down a freaking badger hole. Yeah, but I haven't been bit yet. So there's that.
Yeah, that's a good story. So, right, California badgers are not a normal game animal. Technically, they're a fur bearer. They do have a season, and it's like from like November, I think, into January. We're way past statute of limitations on this, so I don't mind sharing this story. So, the first time I ever saw a badger, I was a kid, and we were somewhere in the Central Valley, California, and I was like 7 years old, 8 years old, something like that. But my dad had just gotten me a centerfire 17 HMR, and it was a Thompson center. I think it was the Encore. It was the smaller version. And we were driving down a ranch road. I'm like 8 years old, sitting in the bed of this pickup. Right, we're stopping every time we'd see a little, group of ground squirrels. I'm shooting them off the bed of the truck, and we stop, and someone's like, man, what's that up on the hill? And this badger's peeking up out of a hill looking down at us, and it's about 80 yards. And basically my dad's buddy's like, I think it's a badger. And my dad's like, can you shoot it? And I just said, can I? And I think my dad just said, yeah. And I cracked a shot off, and I hit this thing at 80 yards, like right between the eyes as a little kid. And just like you were explaining the last time we talked, why it's a crack shot. At the time as a kid, I was a really good shot for being as young as I was, and I center punched it right between the eyes, and it kind of just slunked back in the hole. And my dad was like, "Did you hit it?" And I'm like, "I'm pretty sure I hit it." So we go walking up there, and this thing was in the hole, basically like face forward, and it was way down in the bottom, basically like right where you'd get an arm down this thing. And I remember my dad being like, my dad's, big, muscular, at the time, retired cop, but like big, hardcore dude, ex-SWAT guy. And he at the time was like, dude, are we sure this thing's dead? I don't know. So he has me plug it, like basically point blank from the hole, bang, right? 17 HMR, it's dead. Yeah. And he reaches down there and he grabs it, and he was like, dude, I swear I felt resistance. And so he ends up walking down to the truck, lets go of it, walks back down to the truck, walks back up, grabs a 38 special, shoots it, reaches down the hole, grabs it, and pulls it out. And badgers aren't a normal thing in California. So I remember my dad and his buddy who were there, right, that was actually facilitating this whole thing after telling me to shoot this thing. The entire time they were like, these things are so tough, man. They're like the cousin of the Wolverine and all this stuff. It was hilarious. And as a little kid, I'm watching this whole thing happen, and I'm thinking this thing's like are bullets glancing off this thing? Is it bulletproof? And I'm thinking it's the craziest thing ever. So then, fast forward as an adult, getting into varmint hunting, going into, Nevada to go shoot them up by Battle Mountain and stuff. I've reached down a couple of holes to go grab them. And every time it's always, someone kicks your boot or something or grabs you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, badgers have so much extra skin, right? So when you're pulling because they can really elongate, they're in the musculid family. So they're the same family as a weasel and a ferret, so they got lots of extra skin. So it's amazing to see how big of a badger comes out of such a small hole. So when you're pulling on them and all that extra skin's kind of rolling and you're pulling against it, yeah, it's resistance, but it feels like they're trying to claw themselves further down in the hole. It's freaky. And if you've never done it, you should at least once to experience it. But yeah, it's kind of nerve-wracking to stick your hand down that hole.
So after I've stuck my hand down a couple different holes, I saw someone, and I'm not sure if you guys have ever tried it. You guys have a lot more experience doing this than I do with badgers. Have you guys ever tried grabbing like just a length of barbed wire and sticking it down the hole and like twisting it to try to get it?
It doesn't work very well. It doesn't work very well. No, their hide's so thick.
You guys are going to try it for some reason. Now you guys have firsthand.
No, trust me. I've tried every which way to get one out without sticking my hand down there, and I ended up sticking my hand down there. But no, their hide's so thick. It's ridiculously thick, and barbed wire is not going to even penetrate it. You're not going to do it, and that oily musk just kind of makes it roll off.
Yeah, like slick as well.
Yeah.
Well, sounds like maybe in a few months we'll all get together and there will be a video of someone sticking their hand down a badger hole.
There should be. It should be Wyatt. That's who I'm electing. Yeah. He hasn't done it yet. He needs to. And he's a skinny kid. He can fit down the hole. So we'll just send him down there to get it.
Yeah,
he doesn't know this yet. It'll be a surprise.
Yeah, I'd see that's a rite of passage.
Yeah, I think it is. He needs to quit hitting them so solid to where they just fall over where they stand. He needs to shoot one not very good, so it goes down the hole and is mad and still alive. That's where the fun begins.
Yeah, that's where you need a little terrier. They can start.
Yeah.
Right, going down the hole as you're trying to dig it out.
Yeah, my corgi's he's laying over there on the couch. He ain't doing that shit. I can tell.
No, neither's mine.
Yeah, he's worthless as hell, but we love him.
Again, I appreciate it, Cache.
Thank you so much.
To Gab, we'll call it. And guys, and Cache, correct me if I'm wrong. I just want to make sure I get everything right. Things to check out: Varminter Magazine.
Yep.
The Small Caliber
Forum. smallcaliberforum.com, and that's where you're going to find a lot of most all information on the 24 Varminter, and then you're going to see a lot more of what we do with Varminter Magazine, because the social media, they love us, and they decide to strike us. So that stuff you'll be able to see more of the uncensored stuff on the Small Caliber Forum, Small Caliber Shop or Small Caliber Store.com, where you can get some awesome t-shirts, wear your cartridge. Eric's got, I don't know how many, 150, 200 different designs on there now. T-shirts of anything and everything you can think of. And then, of course, Varminter Magazine on Facebook, Instagram. I think he's got a Twitter page, but I don't think he really updates it much. I'm not on Twitter, so I have no idea. Check out the socials.
Awesome. I'll also include them below. And if you guys are watching this on YouTube, Varminter Magazine's YouTube page will be tagged in this as well. If you guys are listening on one of the other platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcast, all of it will be down in the link below or in the description below. And you guys can check the links out. And Cache, if you're good with it, I can link your Instagram so
Absolutely.
People can message you or your Facebook.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much. Appreciate it.